Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the drifting, shimmering intersection between quantum possibility and the mysterious landscapes of your dreams. It is a gentle place where imagination leans into science, where memories blur softly into what-ifs, and where the mind floats between all the versions of reality it can imagine, and perhaps a few it cannot. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each of us held gently inside our own little slice of time. Now, feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, or settle deeper into your pillow. If your mind begins to wander, let it drift. There is nothing to hold on to tonight. We're just here to float a little, to explore a question that sits at the edge of science and mystery. When you dream, are you wandering only inside your own mind, or brushing softly against other worlds where another version of you is dreaming too? With that thought resting lightly beside you, let's begin our journey into the quantum hum of the dreaming mind. When you close your eyes at night, something remarkable happens long before the first dream unfurls. Your breath slows, your thoughts loosen, and the familiar world around you begins to fade into a gentle blur. It's a transition so ordinary that most nights you don't notice it at all, yet it is one of the most delicate shifts your mind ever performs. A movement from the bright, structured logic of daytime into a softer place where memories, emotions, and imagination begin to drift together like slow-moving clouds. Scientists sometimes describe this early boundary as the threshold of sleep, but that phrase hardly captures its feeling. It is more like stepping into warm, shallow water, your mind still aware of the shoreline behind you, but already letting go of its weight. You begin to hear the small internal sounds you usually ignore, the faint thump of your pulse, the soft rhythm of your breathing, the little murmurs that rise as the brain relaxes its grip on the waking world. These sensations form a kind of internal twilight, not quite waking and not yet dreaming, a quiet doorway into the landscapes where your mind soon wanders. As you sink a little deeper, the brain itself gently changes. The busy chatter of daytime thinking begins to dim, like lights being lowered in a theatre before the curtain rises. The part of your mind responsible for planning and analysing begins to step back, allowing other regions, older, more emotional, more imaginative, to drift forward. It is a subtle handover, but an important one. The logical voice that normally keeps your thoughts tidy loosens its hold, and because of that, the impossible begins to feel possible. In these moments, you might notice flickers of imagery, shapes, colours, half-formed scenes. They appear without warning, like soft ripples on a still pond. Scientists call these brief flashes hypnagogic images, but the term is less important than the feeling itself, tiny previews of the dreams to come. They're not quite stories yet, but they hint at the vast creative space your mind is preparing to enter. And just beneath these images lies the gentle hum that tonight's journey is all about. It's not a sound, not really. More a sensation, an impression that the mind is floating in a sea of possibilities. Neuroscientists might describe this state as a mixture of memory replay, sensory quieting, and slow rhythmic brain activity. Quantum physicists might describe the entire universe at every moment as holding countless unrealized paths, all present at once in a soft, shimmering cloud of possibility. But for our purposes tonight, you can think of this hum as the background vibration of everything you could dream, everything you could imagine, and perhaps everything that could happen in some distant corner of a wider reality. What makes this threshold so fascinating is how naturally the mind accepts it. One moment you're in your room, hearing the fan or the distant streetlight hum. The next moment, your awareness begins to loosen like a ribbon untied. Time becomes gentler. Thoughts drift in wider circles. The world you know begins to dissolve into something more fluid, more symbolic, more open. And this is where the intriguing question arises, one that people across history have quietly wondered about. When your mind enters this softened state where logic is muted and imagination stirs awake, what exactly is it touching? Is a dream simply the brain reheating its memories and emotions? Is it a private theatre where you're the writer, the actor, and the audience all at once? Or could the dream state, in its openness and fluidity, allow the mind to brush against patterns of reality it cannot reach while awake? Some ancient cultures believed exactly that. The dreamer was thought to walk briefly in other realms, or glimpse truths hidden from the daytime mind. And while modern science does not say such journeys literally occur, it does acknowledge that the dreaming brain explores possibilities far beyond the boundaries of waking thought. It combines ideas that would never meet in the daylight. It rearranges memories as if shuffling cards. It blends emotion and imagery into landscapes that feel familiar yet impossible. This quiet threshold, this doorway between waking and dreaming, is where the mind begins to loosen enough to imagine realities it does not inhabit, choices it did not make, lives it never lived. And whether those visions come purely from within, or whether they brush gently against the vast sea of possibilities that the universe holds, that is the mystery that awaits as we drift deeper into the night. The doorway is open now, the mind is unhurried, and the journey has only just begun. Long before we tried to understand dreams with brain scans or sleep laboratories, people looked at them with a different kind of attention, one shaped not by instruments, but by intuition, imagination, and the simple human desire to make sense of the mysterious. When you close your eyes and drift into sleep, the world you enter feels ancient, older than any language. Civilizations across the earth notice the same thing thousands of years apart. Dreams carry a quality that is familiar yet foreign, comforting yet strange. They seem to come from within us, but also feel as if they arrive from somewhere slightly beyond reach, like a soft message left on your windowsill during the night. In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams were thought to be direct messages from the gods. Temples had special chambers where people slept in hopes of receiving guidance, whether about a harvest, a journey, or a lost loved one. The stories carved into their clay tablets speak of dreams visited by divine figures, carrying symbols that needed careful interpretation. A river overflowing might signal abundance, while a falcon in flight might warn of change. People believed dreams were not random. They were woven with intention. The ancient Egyptians took this even further. They recorded dreams on papyrus scrolls, cataloguing symbols the way we might organise constellations. A dream of clear water meant clarity and waking life. A dream of a cat meant protection. Entire manuals existed, early dream dictionaries, and priests trained specifically to interpret the images people carried from their sleep. To them, the dream world was a place you could visit, a landscape with its own rules, its own inhabitants, and its own truths waiting to be discovered. Then came the Greeks, who brought philosophy into the picture. They didn't see dreams purely as divine messages nor as random illusions. Instead, thinkers like Aristotle imagined dreams as reflections of the dreamer's internal state, a mirror held up to the mind. A dream of warmth might come from a heavy blanket. A nightmare of fire might echo a troubled heart. But even Aristotle admitted dreams often contain information we cannot easily explain, as if the dreaming mind knew more than it could say while awake. Centuries later, in a very different world, Sigmund Freud suggested that dreams draw their power from unspoken desires and hidden emotions. His ideas painted the dream as a deeply personal theatre, where your mind replays, reshapes, or wrestles with the things it cannot face in daylight. His student Carl Jung offered another thought, that hidden within our dreams are shared human symbols, archetypes that appear across continents and cultures. A journey, a shadow, a mother figure, a doorway. These symbols felt universal, as if threaded through the collective experience of being human. What is fascinating is how all these interpretations, divine messages, emotional mirrors, symbolic codes, share a common belief. Dreams are meaningful. They reveal something. They open a small window into a deeper layer of existence. And perhaps that is why, even today, we sometimes wake from a dream with a feeling that lingers like a faint scent. A place we've never visited feels strangely familiar. A face we don't remember knowing feels like someone we've met before. A situation unfolds with a clarity that feels borrowed from another life. It's as if the dream world gently brushes against something broader than our waking experience. Some people across many eras have wondered if these moments point toward a different possibility, one that modern physics has begun to quietly entertain. If the universe holds many branches of reality, each unfolding its own version of events, could dreams sometimes echo traces of those alternate paths? The question is poetic rather than literal, but it grows naturally from the way dreams feel. They don't always behave like memories. They don't always use the logic of your everyday life. Instead, they unfold like stories written by a version of you who lives with slightly different choices in slightly different circumstances. This is not to say that dreams are doorways into parallel worlds. The science behind that idea remains purely imaginative. But the feeling, the sensation that something or someone in a dream is familiar in a way you can't explain, is universal enough that it invites a moment of wondering. Dreams often mix fragments of memory with pieces of imagination, but they also draw from emotional truths that lie deep within you. And emotions, unlike facts, often resonate in ways that feel larger than one single lifetime. As you explore your dreams, you might notice themes that repeat themselves. Water, heights, endless staircases, rooms you return to again and again, even though you've never walked those hallways in waking life. Many people across the world share these motifs, even if they've never met. This quiet repetition across cultures can feel like a subtle thread connecting all dreamers, a reminder that the dream world is not entirely private. It holds symbols that seem to drift from one mind to another, as if carried by a soft current. Perhaps this is why so many cultures describe dreams as journeys. Not physical journeys, but journeys of meaning, crossing from the known to the unknown. The dreamer steps into a landscape shaped by memory, but touched by imagination. A place where boundaries soften, where the mind can rehearse, relive, or reimagine its stories without the limits it faces in waking life. Tonight, as we drift together through this quiet exploration, the purpose is not to reach a firm conclusion, but to rest inside the wonder itself, to hold the thought that all humans, across thousands of years, looked at their dreams and felt that they came from somewhere special, somewhere that matters, somewhere that deserves our attention. As the soft edges of this idea settle inside your thoughts, we can stay with the feeling that dreams, whatever their origin, invite us into a space that is both deeply personal and quietly universal. A space where the stories of your own life blend with the timeless stories carried by all who have dreamed before you. A space where meaning floats gently, waiting for you to catch it in your own time. And in that shared human experience, thousands of cultures dreaming over thousands of years, there is already something that feels wonderfully close to a multiverse, a place where many worlds of meaning coexist, a place where every dreamer, in their own way, steps softly into possibility. When the body finally decides it is time to rest, the process of falling asleep begins so quietly that it almost hides itself. You breathe a little slower, your limbs feel heavier, Your thoughts begin to soften around the edges, drifting from one idea to another without urgency. It feels simple, natural, automatic. Yet beneath that gentle descent is a remarkably intricate shift in the brain, one that moves in waves, layers, and cycles, like a tide retreating from the shore. Scientists sometimes describe sleep as a kind of architecture, but for our journey tonight, it may be easier to picture it as a slow walk through a dimming landscape. Each stage brings a different kind of quiet, a different depth of drifting, and each prepares your mind for the dreaming world waiting further below. The first stage is the lightest touch of sleep, a brief, delicate moment where the brain is just beginning to loosen. You can still hear the world around you, a distant car passing, the soft hum of a fan, the faint shifting of sheets. If someone calls your name, you might still respond, as though you were only dipping your fingers into the water instead of stepping fully inside. In this state, the brain's rhythms slow down from their daytime patterns into something softer and more irregular. Like the first flickers of candlelight in a darkening room, drift a little deeper, and the second stage begins to unfold. Here, the external world starts to fade further away. Your muscles relax, your heartbeat finds a quieter pace, and your body temperature lowers just a little. Inside your skull, tiny bursts of electrical activity appear. Scientists call them spindles, a word chosen because they look like spinning threads on a graph. But you don't need the graph to understand them. In your experience, these little bursts feel like protection. They help your mind stay asleep, gently shushing the noises of the world so you can drift without interruption. As this stage settles, your brain begins to enter the deepest portion of sleep, a region so restorative that it acts almost like a nighttime workshop. Here, your mind and body repair themselves in ways you never notice. Muscles mend, immune systems strengthen, thoughts and memories quietly sort themselves into order. The brain produces slow, sweeping waves of activity, big, rolling movements that feel nothing like the quick sparks of daytime thinking. These slow waves help the brain clear out the clutter gathered from the day, making room for new ideas, new emotions, new experiences tomorrow. Many people never feel this shift consciously, but they sometimes sense its absence. Nights when you sleep lightly, tossing and turning, can leave you feeling as though you never quite refilled your inner reserves. Nights when you dip into deep sleep, however, can feel like falling into a warm, silent pool, a place where the world cannot reach you. But it is what comes after this deep stage that fascinates dreamers and scientists alike. Because as the night continues, your brain begins to climb up again, not to wakefulness, but toward a brighter, more active state. And in this stage, your dreams begin. This is the moment called rapid eye movement sleep, the stage where vivid dreams appear. You won't feel your eyes moving beneath your eyelids, but they will flicker gently, almost as if they are watching scenes unfold on the inside of your mind. Your breathing becomes lighter, your heartbeat slightly quicker, your brain surprisingly active. In fact, in this stage, the brain's activity looks almost like the mind of someone who is awake and thinking deeply. Yet your body is resting in a special stillness. The muscles that move your limbs and torso are temporarily quieted, placed into a soft paralysis, so your physical body does not act out the movements of your dream. It is a protective measure, a quiet safety switch, and it allows the mind to wander unbounded, exploring places you could never walk in daylight. What is this stage, really? Scientists explain it in different ways. Some say it is the brain consolidating memories, taking fragments of your day, your concerns and your emotions, and weaving them into symbolic stories. Others suggest it is a form of emotional housekeeping, a time when the heart-mind system gently processes feelings too subtle or too overwhelming for waking thought. Still others imagine this stage as the brain's creative workshop, where associations that do not normally meet are allowed to merge, leading to the vivid imagery and impossible storylines so familiar in dreams. But there is something else happening here too, something more delicate, more mysterious. In this stage, the logical centres of the brain soften their grip, allowing imagination to rise to the surface. The mind becomes a painter without rules, free to mix colours and shapes in new ways. Events no longer need linear time, places no longer need geography. People can appear as symbols, echoes, or combinations of memory. And because the sense of self becomes more fluid, you may feel like yourself, and yet not entirely. You may walk into a scene that feels both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time, as if it belongs to your life and to a life you never lived. It is here, in this bright inner landscape, that many people sense the faint poetic possibility that dreams draw from more than memory alone. The surreal logic, the vivid colours, the strange familiarity. These qualities make the dream world feel like a realm where boundaries loosen, where your mind can imagine not just what was, but what could be. Perhaps that is why dreams so easily invite thoughts of parallel lives, branching paths, and the soft resonance of other possibilities. As the brain cycles through these stages, night after night, it moves rhythmically between rest, repair, vivid imagery, and the gentle chaos of dreaming, and each cycle takes you a little deeper into the quiet, shimmering world where imagination and memory intertwine. A world that has invited wonder for as long as humans have closed their eyes. This soft movement through the architecture of sleep is not merely a biological necessity. It is also the slow opening of a doorway leading into the dreamscapes where tonight's questions begin to take shape. If you've ever woken from a dream feeling as though you had lived an entire lifetime somewhere else, you're not alone. There's a particular kind of dream, quiet, vivid, strangely coherent, where the you inside the dream feels almost like a separate person, someone who has their own habits, their own preferences, even their own memories. You wake with the faint sensation that you are borrowing a life not entirely your own. It fades quickly, but the impression lingers like a warm trace in the air. And for some people, that feeling invites a gentle question. Why does the mind sometimes behave as though there are other versions of us quietly living elsewhere? Modern physics has its own way of approaching such thoughts. Deep within quantum theory lies an idea as soft as it is startling, that the universe might not be a single storyline, but a vast tapestry of many possible ones. Not separate universes floating like bubbles, but different paths, each unfolding from every moment of choice or chance. Scientists sometimes call this the many worlds interpretation, but the name is less important than the intuition behind it. You can think of it as the universe holding more than one perhaps at a time. When a tiny particle faces two possible paths, left or right, up or down, here or there, quantum physics suggests it doesn't pick one until it must. Instead, it briefly holds both possibilities, a state that physicists call superposition. But for our sleep-friendly journey tonight, we can imagine this state not as a mathematical formula, but as a soft cloud of maybes, a shimmering haze where more than one thing could happen. And when the particle interacts with the world, the cloud settles into one of those possibilities, like a coin finally landing after hovering in the air. The many worlds idea expands this gentle picture to the entire universe. Instead of settling into just one outcome, the universe may allow every possibility to unfold, each in its own direction. You choose one street, and another version of you chooses the other. You take one job, and another version walks through a different door. Not as fantasies, but as quiet, diverging lines of reality, each carried forward on its own path. Now, to be clear, this theory does not say that dreams literally transport you to those branching lives. But the idea of many coexisting realities offers a poetic way to think about why dreams can sometimes feel so rich, so familiar, and so strangely connected to choices you never made. If the universe truly holds a vast landscape of possibilities, then the dream world, with all its fluidity and symbolism, becomes a natural place for your mind to explore alternatives, what-ifs, and echoes of unrealized paths. Imagine reality as a great forest of stories. You walk along one trail during the day, the one your life has chosen. But at night, when the logical part of your mind rests, imagination and memory walk more freely. They drift through the nearby branches of the forest, wandering into paths that feel almost like they belong to you. And because the dreaming mind is not constrained by the rules of time or geography, it can wander into the shape of possibilities, into lives that might have been, into emotions you never felt while awake, or into choices you almost made but didn't. This metaphor stays safely within science while leaving room for wonder. The many worlds model is not about magic, it is about possibility. It suggests that the universe is not a single line but a branching pattern, like the veins on a leaf or the rivers of a delta, and your dreams, in their own way, often resemble this pattern. They move sideways instead of forward. They show you versions of events that never occurred. They create houses you've never lived in, friendships that never happened, and decisions you never made but somehow understand. And this is where the feeling of familiarity becomes so intriguing. Why do you sometimes meet someone in a dream, a stranger you have never seen, yet feel as though you know them intimately? Why do you find yourself walking through a room that does not exist, but feels unmistakably like yours? Why do dream emotions sometimes feel deeper, older, or more resonant than the ones you carry through your ordinary days? From a neuroscience perspective, these sensations can be explained by memory recombination, emotional blending, and the brain's remarkable ability to create coherent narratives from tiny fragments of experience. But the many worlds metaphor offers an additional layer of poetic insight. If your waking life follows only one of the universe's many paths, then your dreams may feel like soft shadows cast by the others, shaping themselves from the same raw materials, your fears, your longings, your potential selves. This doesn't make the dream world a literal crossing of realities, but it allows us to appreciate how naturally the mind slips into imagining alternate versions of life. When you dream, the strict boundaries of the waking world dissolve, the linear timeline loosens, the self becomes fluid, porous, capable of exploring scenarios beyond your daily identity. And in that openness, it is not difficult to understand why people across cultures and centuries sense that dreams might hold more than simple fantasy. Perhaps that is why the dream world feels so spacious, why it accommodates not just memories, but possibilities, not just your story, but countless variations of it. Dreams may simply be the mind's way of exploring the entire landscape of what life could feel like. And if the universe itself is woven from countless branching possibilities, then dreaming becomes a beautifully human reflection of that cosmic pattern. The many worlds idea does not need to be literal in your dreams to offer comfort. It reminds you that life holds more than one path, more than one outcome, more than one way of being you. And your dreams, with all their strangeness and beauty, may be the gentlest way your mind chooses to explore the richness of that possibility. As this idea settles quietly within you, the dream world begins to look a little different, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a place where the imagination softly meets the shape of the universe itself. There is a particular kind of dream that almost everyone has experienced at least once. You open a door, step into a room, or walk down a street that feels unmistakably familiar, so familiar that your body relaxes as if recognizing an old memory. And yet when you wake, you realize that place does not exist anywhere you've ever been. The walls, the street lamps, the scent in the air, the way the light spills across a floor, every element feels as real as waking life, but belongs to a world you've never walked in. Dream characters can feel this way too. A stranger approaches you in a dream, speaks to you, smiles, asks something of you, yet carries an emotional weight that feels like a childhood friend, a family member, or someone whose absence you somehow remember. When you wake, their face dissolves instantly, as if made of morning mist. You know you have never seen them in your waking life, and yet the bond felt real. These familiar strangers are one of the softest mysteries of the dreaming mind. Neuroscientists offer a simple explanation. The brain blends memories together. It pulls a nose from someone you glimpsed 10 years ago, a voice from a passing conversation, a posture from a stranger on the train, and mixes them with feelings drawn from deep emotional stores. In this view, dream characters are mosaics, pieces of remembered details reassembled into new forms. But even if this is true, it does not fully explain the sense of recognition, that deep pulse of "I know you" that some dream figures awaken in us. And then there are the recurring ones. These are the characters who appear in dream after dream, even across years. A figure who watches quietly from a distance. Someone who argues with you. Someone who guides you. Someone who simply exists alongside you in a way that feels strangely stable. Recurring dream characters often appear in settings that shift around them. Cities, houses, landscapes, but they remain themselves, as if they belong to a world that continues whether you visit it or not. It is in these moments that people often feel the quiet stirring of something deeper. Could these characters be emotional echoes, symbols, internal guides, or, as some wonder, in softer, more imaginative moments? Could they be reflections of a version of you, or someone else, living out a different thread of possibility? Dream cities behave in the same mysterious way. You might find yourself walking through an impossible place, a street lined with lanterns you've never seen, a bridge you've never crossed, a park where you somehow remember playing as a child even though you never have. These landscapes, like the familiar strangers, feel borrowed, as if the mind dipped into a memory from a life not your own. When you wake, the city melts away, but the feeling lingers, its textures, its layout, its emotional atmosphere. Some people describe this sensation as déjà vu inside a dream, an almost physical recognition of a place that does not exist. In waking life, déjà vu is often described as a moment when the brain briefly misfires, blending the present with a pattern stored somewhere in memory. But in dreams, déjà vu feels different. It feels deeper, older, less like a glitch and more like a whisper. This is where the gentle metaphors of quantum possibility begin to feel at home. In the many worlds picture, the universe is thought to hold many pathways, each reflecting a different outcome of events. Not as literal worlds you can step into, but as soft shadows of possibility that exist quietly alongside the version you inhabit. If you imagine a great forest with countless winding paths, your waking life walks one of them. But perhaps your dreams, with their fluidity and openness, wander loosely among the shapes of nearby paths, feeling their contours without fully stepping inside. A dream stranger might feel familiar because they echo a person who exists in one of those nearby possibilities. Not literally, but emotionally, as a symbol of potential relationships, potential conflicts, potential versions of connection. A dream city might feel like home because it reflects the layout of a life you could have lived, the job you might have taken, the friend you could have met, the trip you almost made but didn't. These dreams don't claim to show alternate realities, but they mirror the emotional shape of them. Another explanation, softer still, is that dreams take the raw materials of your mind, your longings, your regrets, your fears, your overlooked details, and weave them into landscapes that feel more complete than waking imagination ever allows. The mind at night is free from linear thinking, so it pulls pieces together in ways that feel startlingly coherent. A recurring stranger might represent a part of yourself that you do not meet during the day. A familiar dream city might reflect a version of comfort, safety, or longing that feels like a home you haven't yet found. Yet the sensation remains. A dream can feel like it belongs to a place that exists, even if only in the quiet corners of possibility. And here, a softer interpretation of quantum ideas becomes useful, not to explain dreams scientifically, but to illustrate the delicate feeling they evoke. If the universe truly holds countless possibilities, then perhaps your mind senses that openness in subtle, poetic ways. Your dreams might brush gently against the emotional outline of other paths your life could take. They might echo the rhythm of decisions you never made. They might reveal the quiet gravity of unchosen futures. And when you meet a familiar stranger in a dream, when you walk through a city that dissolves at dawn, when you sense that the story you were living was one thread in a much larger tapestry, that feeling may not be evidence of parallel worlds, but it fits beautifully with how the human mind imagines them. As these thoughts rest softly inside you, the notion arises that dreams do not always create new worlds from nothing. Sometimes they reveal worlds that feel just slightly out of reach, close enough to touch, close enough for your emotions to recognize, even if your waking memory cannot. And in that gentle overlap between imagination and possibility, the dream world becomes a place where another version of you might almost be breathing just behind the door you didn't open. There is a quietness in the universe that you do not hear with your ears but sense with something deeper. It is not a silence exactly, more like a soft vibration beneath everything, a gentle trembling, like the faint resonance you feel when a faraway train passes or when wind brushes against a closed window. Physicists describe this subtle motion as the activity of quantum fields, the ever-present fabric that underlies all matter and energy. But for tonight, you may think of it simply as the hum of possibility, always there, always whispering, even when you sleep. At the smallest scales of existence, particles do not behave like tiny spheres or marbles. They behave more like ripples, fluctuations in invisible fields that extend across the entire universe. Even in perfect darkness, even in absolute stillness, these fields never settle completely. They continue to flicker, tremble, and shift, producing tiny pulses of energy so delicate that only the most sensitive instruments can detect them. Scientists sometimes call these fluctuations vacuum energy, but to imagine them more gently, picture a calm lake that seems perfectly still. Look closely, and you'll notice the surface is never truly frozen. It shivers with almost imperceptible movements. This constant activity is what scientists think gives the universe its quiet background hum. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just a steady, subtle vibration that means the universe is never completely asleep. And since everything you are, your thoughts, your memories, your dreamscapes, arises from the brain's delicate patterns of electrical activity, you might wonder, does this hum touch the mind? Does it shape our thoughts in ways too soft for us to notice directly? In physics, one of the most poetic ideas is superposition. It describes how a tiny particle can hold more than one possibility at once, not choosing a single path until something nudges it, an interaction, a measurement, or a moment where potential becomes actual. Instead of thinking about particles sitting in two places, imagine an orchard at dawn. The world is quiet, the air still, and a soft fog rests between the trees. In that fog, pathways blur and overlap. You can walk anywhere, but nothing is decided until you take your first step. Superposition is like that fog, a gentle holding of many maybes at once, without urgency. Another idea, entanglement, describes a kind of connection that remains even when two things drift far apart. If two particles become linked, their behaviours can remain intertwined no matter the distance between them. For tonight's purposes, Rather than picturing equations, imagine two lanterns floating on a calm river. Push one lightly, and the other shifts in response, as if the water itself carries the memory of their connection. This is not exactly how physics works, of course, but it captures the feeling, the sense that some relationships remain even when separated by distance. These ideas, superposition, entanglement, fluctuations in a quiet field, do not explain dreams directly. They do not mean that when you dream of a familiar stranger, you're peering into another world in any literal sense. But they offer something subtler and more beautiful, metaphors that help us imagine the ways your mind might move through possibilities when logic relaxes and imagination rises. When you dream, your mind becomes remarkably fluid. It explores scenarios that never happened, emotions you haven't yet processed, choices you didn't make. It wanders through landscapes shaped partly by memory and partly by creativity, weaving together images that feel both new and strangely inevitable. This wandering resembles the way particles explore possibilities before settling into one. The dreaming mind, in its fluid openness, behaves more like a field of potential than a rigid timeline. And here is where the quantum hum feels especially fitting. In the deep hours of the night, when the world around you is quiet and the boundaries of the self loosen, your mind becomes sensitive to patterns, emotional patterns, symbolic patterns, imagined patterns. It is not that you literally tune into quantum processes. Rather, the openness of dreams mirrors the openness of possibility that quantum physics describes. Both move gently through the space between certainty and mystery. Some people describe waking from a dream with the sense that they were not alone, not necessarily with another person, but with another version of themselves, a version that made different choices, followed different paths, or lived inside a world slightly tilted away from their own. Dreams often carry that strange emotional resonance, as if they echo from a place where things unfolded differently. Not a literal universe, but a psychological one, an inner multiverse shaped by all the potentials your mind has ever imagined. This is why the metaphor of the quantum hum feels so natural when talking about dreams. Just as the universe is never truly still, your mind is never fully quiet. Beneath every thought, beneath every memory, beneath every emotion, there are layers of subtle activity, whispers of ideas and possibilities you may never consciously notice. The dreaming mind draws from these layers, stirring them into stories that feel at once impossible and deeply meaningful. If you listen closely to your nighttime mind, you may notice this hum at work. The way a dream shifts from one scene to another without any break. The way a doorway in a dream can lead to a childhood home, a foreign city, or an impossible landscape. The way a single thought can blossom into an entire universe of imagery. These movements feel random, but they often reflect gentle patterns, like faint ripples travelling across the surface of your imagination. When seen this way, dreams become not just random firings of neurons, but quiet resonances. Moments when your inner world vibrates with the subtle rhythms of everything you have ever been, everything you could be, and everything you still might become. The quantum hum becomes a metaphor for the richness of your inner universe, always shifting, always offering new paths to wander. And perhaps, in the quiet of night, your mind senses the openness of the cosmos in its own small way, not through equations or symbols, but through feeling, through story, through dreams that rise and fall like the echo of something ancient and infinite. As the night deepens and you drift through the cycles of sleep, the mind enters a territory that feels less like a physical place and more like a soft expanse of openness. In this stage, your brain becomes both quieter and more creative, as if the boundaries that hold your daytime thoughts neatly in place have loosened just enough for something new to slip through. Dreams become brighter, stranger, more fluid. And the question that gently rises is this: When the mind relaxes so completely, what might it become receptive to? During the vivid phase of sleep known for its bright inner imagery, your brain behaves in a way that is both surprising and beautiful. The systems responsible for strict logic and careful decision-making dim their lights, making room for networks that specialize in creativity, emotion, and internal reflection. Scientists often say that the dreaming brain is highly active, but this description hides the softness of the transition. It is not a frantic activity. It is more like the glow of lanterns along a quiet path, subtle illuminations that guide the imagination in directions it does not travel while awake. One of the most intriguing networks in the brain, often active in dreams, is sometimes called the default mode network. But rather than naming it like a technical switch, imagine instead a secret garden that lights up only when the rest of the mind becomes still. This quiet network helps you reflect on yourself, imagine the future, revisit memories, and create new stories from old fragments. When you dream, this inner garden becomes bright with activity, blooming with images, symbols, and emotions. You do not direct it. It simply glows. And in this glow, the brain begins to feel like a receiver, open to unusual patterns, hints of memory, flashes of imagery that seem to come from beyond your ordinary awareness. Not from another dimension in any literal way, but from parts of yourself that remain silent during the day. When the gatekeepers of your waking mind step aside, the delicate signals from deeper layers of thought can finally rise to the surface. Some people describe this feeling as tuning into something faint, like trying to catch a radio station that drifts in and out of range. The mind in REM sleep is unusually sensitive. It picks up emotional tones, subtle memories, and symbolic images that are too soft to notice while fully awake. It mixes them gently, creating dreams that feel oddly coherent even when they make no logical sense. In this way, the dreaming brain resembles a receiver that is searching across a wide spectrum, capturing signals both familiar and strange. You might notice this when a dream includes someone you haven't thought about in years, or when a forgotten childhood memory appears with startling clarity. Sometimes a dream draws on fears you never fully acknowledged, or joys you didn't realize you'd lost. These internal signals are always present, but only when your mind becomes quiet enough, soft enough, do they finally rise into awareness. And this is where the metaphor of tuning into possibility becomes so compelling. When the dreaming brain is free from external noise, it wanders across an inner landscape shaped by all the paths your life could take, not in the scientific sense of touching parallel realities, but in the emotional sense of exploring possibilities. The mind rehearses choices, imagines outcomes, and stitches together scenes that hint at futures you might never consciously consider. It is as if the sleeping brain opens a wide window onto the field of potential, your personal cloud of maybes. This sensitivity to possibility sometimes creates dreams that feel eerily connected to events before they happen. Not because the mind is seeing the future, but because it is exploring patterns already forming beneath your awareness. Before a decision takes shape in waking life, your dreaming mind may roam through different versions of it, testing, feeling, sensing. This can give dreams a strangely prophetic quality, even though nothing supernatural is required. The mind is simply more open at night, more willing to explore the edges of what might be. The metaphor of the brain as a receiver can also illuminate the feeling of connection in dreams. You might dream of someone you care about on the same night they dream of you, or feel an emotional link so strong that you wake with a warmth that lingers. These moments do not need literal communication to feel powerful. Emotional intuition is a quiet signal, and in sleep your mind can feel those signals more clearly. It can sense the emotional atmospheres around you, the subtle shifts in relationships, the unspoken hopes and worries of the people you love. When the mind drifts through sleep, these impressions rise like soft echoes. This is not evidence that dreams connect minds across distance, but it aligns with the feeling, the human sense that dreams open us to something slightly beyond ourselves. The boundaries between inner and outer worlds become thinner. Your thoughts and feelings become intertwined with your memories and your perception of others. In this openness, your mind feels more porous, less like a closed room, and more like a house with windows open to the night. As you drift further into this idea, the metaphor gently extends. If the universe truly holds countless possibilities, each one waiting quietly like notes on an unwritten page, then perhaps the dreaming mind, in its openness, becomes more attuned to the shape of those possibilities. Not to touch them directly, but to sense their outlines, to feel their emotional weight, to imagine their stories, and to weave those stories into the fabric of your dreams. In this way, the sleeping brain becomes a receiver, not of external worlds, but of everything inside you that remains unspoken. A receiver of intuition, of subtle memories, of imagined futures, of emotional patterns that quietly shape your days. The dreams you experience are not signals from another universe, but reflections of the many paths your life could take. They hum softly with possibility, much like the faint vibrations that never leave the universe entirely still. And when you wake, the echoes linger, a reminder that even in sleep your mind carries a quiet sensitivity to the world, within and around you. A reminder that the boundaries of self are not as rigid as they seem. A reminder that you are always drifting gently through a field of potential, held by the soft hum of everything you could become. There is something quietly astonishing about the fact that humans across cultures, across centuries, and across continents have described dreams that feel strangely shared. A parent and child dreaming of the same storm on the same night. Two close friends dreaming of the same place without ever having spoken of it. Strangers reporting visions that match down to small details. These moments do not happen often, but when they do, they spark a gentle curiosity that lingers long after waking. How can two minds, separated in space and unaware of each other's thoughts, drift into such similar dreamscapes? Science, as always, begins with the simplest explanation. People who are emotionally close often move through life with parallel thoughts, shared concerns, or similar stresses. Their days resonate, even if they do not fully realize it, and dreams, shaped as much by emotion as by memory, may naturally echo these shared rhythms. In this sense, the shared dream is not a mystery. It is two minds responding to similar internal weather. Yet some stories cannot be explained so easily. People who have not spoken in years dream of the same symbol on the same night. Strangers describe identical landscapes that do not exist anywhere in waking life. Across cultures that never interacted, the same motifs appear: the endless staircase, the bottomless well, the figure who points but does not speak. These patterns suggest something deeper than coincidence, something woven into the human experience. One way to understand this is through the idea of a collective inner world, a place not literal or physical, but symbolic. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, but we can think of it more softly as a shared library of human imagery. It is as if every mind, no matter where it grows up, carries the same ancient vocabulary of symbols: water for emotion, heights for ambition or fear, running for escape, doors for possibility. These symbols rise naturally in dreams because they belong to the architecture of being human. If thousands of people dream of flying, it is not because their minds connect across distance, but because the yearning to lift away from the weight of life is universal. If countless dreamers find themselves standing at the edge of a vast ocean, it may be because deep water has always represented mystery, depth, and the unknown. Our dreams repeat each other not because our minds literally touch, but because our experiences echo across generations, and yet, These shared symbols do not fully account for the moments when two dreams feel eerily synchronized. When two people describe not just similar themes but nearly identical scenes. The same room, the same window, the same words spoken by a voice, neither recognizes. These moments suggest a different kind of link, one more emotional than symbolic. Emotions have a way of bridging distance. You sense when someone you love is troubled, even without a word. You notice when someone is holding a joy they have not yet shared. The human mind is sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around it, even in waking life. And in sleep, when the boundaries of self soften, this sensitivity can feel even stronger. It is not that minds communicate through supernatural channels, but rather that emotions, quiet, powerful, and deeply human, shape the dream world in ways that sometimes align. There is also a gentler, more imaginative interpretation, one that leans into the mystery rather than explaining it away. If the universe truly holds a branching tapestry of possibilities, then perhaps every mind drifts inside its own small region of that tapestry, like stars grouped within constellations. Minds that are emotionally close may occupy adjacent regions of possibility. When they dream, their inner landscapes could reflect similar shapes, similar rhythms, the way neighbouring trees in a forest sway to the same breeze. This is not a scientific statement, but a poetic one, a way of imagining why some dreams feel connected. In the many worlds picture, every choice leads to new paths, new outcomes, new lives. And if your dreams reflect the emotional outlines of your possibilities, then someone close to you, someone whose life intertwines with yours, might naturally dream along similar lines. Their possibilities resonate with yours. Their hopes and fears overlap with yours, and perhaps in the loosened space of dreams, your minds wander through neighbouring fields of possibility. There is another layer to this as well, synchronised patterns in the sleeping brain. People who share daily lives, families, couples, close friends, often fall into similar sleep cycles without meaning to. Their rhythms align. When one enters the vivid stage of dreaming, the other may do the same. These cycles are shaped by routines, stress levels, emotional climates, and even shared light exposure in the evenings. When two minds drift into the most imaginative phases of sleep at the same time, their dreams may bloom under similar internal conditions. This does not require any mystical mechanism to feel extraordinary. Two minds drifting through the night, shaped by shared memories, similar emotions, or intertwined lives, may produce dream worlds that resemble each other because they are nourished by the same roots. But even this explanation leaves space for wonder, for the striking feeling that two dreams have touched the same quiet place, for the impression that the dream world is not entirely private, for the sense that somehow dreams can form invisible bridges, not through physics, not through telepathy, but through the shared threads of being human. Some people describe waking from a shared dream with a warmth that lingers for hours, a feeling of closeness that transcends the content of the dream itself. Others describe a sense of being seen or understood in a way they cannot explain. These experiences speak to something fundamental. The dream world is not made of logic. It is made of emotion, memory, intuition, and imagination, the deepest currents of the inner world. And these currents sometimes flow in patterns that resonate across more than one mind. Perhaps that is why the idea of shared dreams feels so natural. It mirrors the way the waking world works. We laugh together, grieve together, hope together, and worry together. Our inner lives are not separate islands, but overlapping shores. Dreams simply reveal this truth in their own quiet, symbolic language. As this thought drifts to rest, you may imagine the dream world not as a solitary landscape, but as a constellation. Many stars, many minds, each shining softly, each shaped by its own story, and yet all moving together through the gentle darkness of the night. There are nights when a dream does not feel like a single story, but a woven pattern, threads crossing threads, scenes sliding into each other, moments looping back with quiet insistence. Instead of moving forward the way waking life does, the dream seems to move sideways, branching the way a vine grows along a wall, exploring every direction at once. Some people describe this as wandering through a labyrinth. Others say it feels like stepping into a world that has been waiting, as if it exists regardless of whether you visit. And still others notice something subtler, the sense that you are drifting through a network of possibilities, like walking along a lattice where every step offers another turn. Dreams that repeat themselves are often the first hint of this hidden structure, a recurring setting, an unfamiliar house that feels like your childhood home, a forest where the light always looks the same, a long hallway with too many doors, can appear across months or years. Even when the details shift, the emotional atmosphere remains constant, like returning to a room where the furniture has moved but the air still remembers your presence. These dream locations feel almost alive, as if they have their own quiet continuity. Why does the mind return to the same places? Neuroscience offers one explanation. The brain revisits emotionally charged memories, unresolved questions, or unfinished patterns. It rebuilds these internal landscapes because they carry meaning your waking mind has not yet explored. But another explanation moves through the imagination more softly. Perhaps these dream worlds are the outlines of paths your life could have taken, lingering just at the edge of awareness. When a dream loops, when you find yourself repeating the same action, the same conversation, or the same journey, it can feel like your mind is testing a path through the lattice of possibilities. You try a door, it doesn't open. You try another. The scene repeats. The mind shifts the details, light becomes shadow, a familiar voice becomes a stranger's, but the structure remains. It is as if the dream is gently asking you to pay attention to something still unresolved. This looping quality mirrors an idea that arises in soft interpretations of quantum time. Not time measured by clocks or equations, but the felt experience of time, the kind that stretches, compresses, or folds inside a dream. A single moment can last an hour. An entire year can pass in an instant. Dream time behaves more like a river whose currents you cannot map. It flows by emotion rather than mathematics, by meaning rather than minutes. In this sense, the dream lattice resembles a space where time is flexible. You might walk forward only to find yourself returning to the same street. You might climb a staircase that seems endless, not because it is truly infinite, but because the dream is exploring a theme, circling a pattern, or examining a possibility from multiple angles. Time in dreams behaves the way water behaves around rocks, finding new channels, eddying, doubling back. And within this shifting landscape, the sense of self becomes equally fluid. Sometimes you feel entirely like yourself. Other times you feel like a version of yourself, older, younger, braver, more fearful, or shaped by choices you never made. You may speak differently, move differently, or see through eyes that are somehow yours and not yours. These transformations are not random. They are the mind's way of exploring alternate emotional pathways, trying on other possibilities like garments held up to a mirror. This fluid identity often appears during dreams, where you act in ways that surprise you. You confront someone you would avoid in waking life. You solve a problem with clarity you didn't know you possessed. Or you react with fear to something trivial, revealing a vulnerability you rarely acknowledge. These moments feel like glimpses of parallel selves, not in a literal multiverse, but in the psychological multiverse that lives inside you. The dream allows you to walk in the shoes of the person you might have been if your life had unfolded differently. This is where the metaphor of adjacent versions of self becomes useful. If you imagine your identity not as a single point, but as a cluster of possibilities, paths branching like filaments of light, then dreams become a place where you can wander through this cluster. You drift from one version of yourself to another, guided not by logic, but by emotion. A confident version of you might help you handle a fear. A frightened version might show you something important you've been avoiding. A wiser version may appear in the form of a stranger whose words wake something inside you. Dreams invite these dialogues not because they are portals to other universes, but because they allow the imagination to travel along the lattice of who you are, who you have been, and who you could become. As this lattice-like quality unfolds, one more pattern becomes clear. Transitions in dreams often feel like stepping through invisible doors. A hallway becomes a forest. A childhood bedroom opens into a city. You turn a corner and find yourself in a place that obeys no physical logic, but feels emotionally inevitable. This sudden shift is one of the dream world's most defining features. It is as if each doorway is a quiet invitation to explore another possibility. And this brings us to a gentle realization. Falling asleep can be imagined as stepping onto an invisible bridge between worlds. Not literal worlds of physics, but the inner worlds of potential selves. When you dream, you walk across that bridge without effort. The boundaries between what you are and what else you could be become thin, flexible, permeable. You drift through scenes shaped by memory, imagination, and emotion, blending your past with your potential. This dream lattice, woven from meaning rather than matter, reveals the astonishing creativity of the human mind. It shows that identity is not fixed but spacious, that time is not linear but elastic. That possibility does not vanish when you choose one path. It stays with you, echoing gently through the spaces you visit at night. And when you wake, you carry traces of those possibilities inside you. The courage from a dream version of yourself, the clarity of a dream conversation, the lingering impression of places that do not exist but somehow matter. The dream lattice continues to shimmer beneath your awareness, reminding you that you are always more than one story. There is a quiet comfort in knowing that no matter where you sleep, in a bustling city, a small village, a mountain cabin, or a room filled with soft electronic light, you join a long, unbroken lineage of dreamers. Every night, countless minds drift into the same vast ocean of inner imagery. They enter their own landscapes, built from memory and emotion, and yet something about those landscapes often feels strangely shared, as if invisible threads weave one dreamer to another. This is where the idea of a cosmic dream web begins to unfold, not as a literal network of minds, but as a metaphor for the way human experience resonates across individuals, cultures, and generations. When you dream, you step into a world shaped by your own life, but you also touch something older and larger, a reservoir of symbols and patterns that countless others have wandered through before you. It is as though your dream is one note in a quiet universal melody. Carl Jung once suggested that the human mind carries a deep reservoir of shared imagery, archetypes, that rise naturally in dreams. But even without using the word archetype, you can sense the truth of it. Across the world, people dream of falling, flying, running through endless corridors, or standing at the edge of water. These dreams repeat not because we communicate them to each other, but because our inner lives are shaped by the same essential experiences: hope, fear, longing, curiosity, and the mystery of simply being alive. Imagine for a moment that each dream is a ripple on a vast and ancient lake. You drop your small stone of experience into the water, and the waves spread outward, touching the ripples made by others. Most of the time, these ripples fade quietly back into the surface, but occasionally two waves meet in such a way that they form a pattern. Subtle, surprising, and beautiful. This is the feeling of shared dream resonance, not a connection built on literal communication, but on the fact that human minds are shaped by similar emotions, similar struggles, similar wonders. Sometimes this resonance appears as a recurring dream symbol: water that rises around your feet, a hallway with countless doors, a vast field lit by soft moonlight. These images appear across cultures because they speak directly to the emotional heart. Water reflects shifts in feeling, doors reflect choices, moonlit fields represent solitude and reflection. When you dream of these things, you engage in a silent conversation with the human experience itself. But the dream web stretches even further. There are nights when your mind drifts into scenes that feel almost synchronized with the emotional atmosphere of those around you. A stressful time in a community might lead many people to dream of storms. A joyful season might fill dreams with warmth and connection. Human emotion spreads quietly, like scent through a room, and dreams, being sensitive to these undercurrents, often mirror them. This sensitivity can feel so vivid that you might believe, in certain moments, that your dreams touch the dreams of others. Two people who care deeply for each other might share similar dream themes. They may not dream the same scene, but the emotions echo. A parent dreams of protecting their child. The child dreams of searching for comfort. Partners, separated by distance, might dream of meeting in the same familiar place they once visited together. These are not coincidences so much as reflections of shared emotional landscapes. The dream world becomes even more mysterious when unusual synchronies appear. Moments where different dreamers describe details so similar, it feels as though they walked through the same symbolic forest. A similar stranger, a similar room, a similar question spoken by a figure neither recognizes. This does not require an explanation grounded in physics. Emotional resonance, shared stress, unspoken hopes, or the collective rhythms of a community can shape dreams in ways that become surprisingly aligned. Yet, the poetic imagination invites one more possibility, one that rests in metaphor rather than measurement. If every mind explores its own universe of inner experience, then perhaps these universes touch at the edges, like neighbouring islands connected by shallow sandbars beneath the surface. Or, like stars in a constellation, each burning independently yet forming patterns that only appear when seen together from afar. In this metaphor, the dream web becomes a gently woven lattice. Your dreams shine from one point in that lattice, while elsewhere, other dreams glow on their own threads. Sometimes, the vibrations of your dreams travel across this delicate structure, not through energy or particles, but through meaning. Emotional meaning, human meaning. Dreams tremble with the hidden stories of your life, and human beings, being more alike than different, often tremble in harmony. This perspective becomes even richer when we imagine the universe itself as a place saturated with gentle rhythm. Not a rhythm that moves planets or shapes galaxies, but a subtle undercurrent of possibility. The same background hum introduced earlier. If that soft hum represents the universe's openness to many futures, then dreams become the human experience of that openness. They are where your inner world brushes against the patterns of potential your waking mind never notices. This does not make dreams portals. It does not make the dream web a literal network. But it does make dreaming a profoundly connected experience. Connected to your own past, connected to emotional truths you share with others, connected to the deep symbolic heritage of humanity. And perhaps that is enough to explain why dreams sometimes feel bigger than you are, why a single dream can carry a weight, a warmth, or a whisper that seems to echo from beyond your personal history. When you dream, you're not simply inventing a story out of nothing. You're dipping into a vast reservoir of human meaning, adding your own voice to a timeless chorus. You drift where countless others have drifted, carried by the same currents of love, fear, hope, curiosity, and mystery. In this way, the dream web is real, not as a structure in space, but as a shared experience that binds humanity. You are never truly alone when you dream. you stand at the edge of an ocean that every person before you has touched. And as your mind wanders through those waters, it moves in rhythms that echo far beyond your sleeping body. There are certain dreams that stay with you long after they dissolve in the morning light. They don't fade the way most dreams do. Instead, they leave a faint pressure behind, like the imprint of a hand on your shoulder, gentle, persistent, difficult to ignore. These are the dreams that arrive with an uncanny sense of significance, a feeling that what you saw was not just imagination, but something quietly pointing toward an event you had not yet lived. Every culture has stories of dreams that seem to predict the future. A traveller who dreams of a broken bridge days before encountering the real one. A parent who dreams of danger and wakes just in time to prevent it. A person who dreams of meeting someone new, only to cross paths with them in waking life in a moment that feels almost scripted. The details differ, but the feeling is always the same. A sense that the dream world brushed against something that had not happened yet. Science approaches these moments cautiously. It explains that the human mind is a pattern-detecting machine. We encounter thousands of small events each day, glances, worries, half-formed thoughts, and the dreaming brain weaves these fragments into stories. Most dream stories never align with the future, but once in a while, purely through coincidence, a dream overlaps with something that happens later. When this happens, the mind pays attention, and the story becomes memorable. Still, this explanation doesn't fully capture the emotional intensity of a premonition dream. There's something about the feeling, an inexplicable certainty, a quiet clarity, that makes these dreams stand apart. They feel less like random images and more like messages wrapped in the language of symbolism. Even if they do not literally reveal the future, they seem to illuminate a direction your life is already leaning toward. Perhaps the most natural explanation is that dreams reveal what you have sensed, but not consciously acknowledged. Your mind collects subtle hints long before you consciously notice them. A shift in someone's tone, a pattern in someone's behavior, a small change in your environment. These hidden impressions are stored deep within. During sleep, when logic loosens and emotion rises, these impressions can reorganize themselves into narratives that feel predictive. Your dreaming mind may be recognizing patterns your waking mind has overlooked. Imagine, for instance, dreaming of a difficult conversation before it happens. You wake with a feeling that something is off. It is not that the dream told the future, it is that your mind noticed small signs, tension, hesitation, unspoken concerns, and expressed them through the imagery of the dream. When the conversation finally occurs, it feels as if the dream predicted it, when in truth, the dream simply revealed what your intuition already sensed. Yet even this does not explain all the stories people tell. There are dreams so specific, so unmistakable, that they feel as though they come from somewhere else entirely. A building you have never seen, a phrase spoken by someone you have never met, a moment that unfolds in waking life exactly as it did in your dream. These rare experiences tug at the imagination, inviting thoughts of hidden connections, subtle currents, and the possibility that dreams might reach beyond the boundaries of ordinary time. Of course, from a scientific perspective, time does not flow backward. But emotionally and psychologically, time behaves differently. A dream can compress an entire day into a minute, or stretch a single moment into a vast landscape. The dreaming mind does not follow the ticking of the clock. It follows patterns, meanings, and emotional truths. And sometimes, those patterns align with future events simply because both are shaped by the same underlying currents. In this sense, premonition dreams may reflect not future events, but the shape of where your life is heading. A dream of falling might precede a moment of emotional upheaval. A dream of running might appear before a period of change. A dream of meeting someone new might arise when your inner world is ready for connection. These dreams feel predictive not because they foresee literal events, but because they sense the emotional momentum that is already moving through your life. And yet, there is something poetic in imagining that dreams might skim near the edges of what is possible. In a universe filled with countless paths, countless outcomes, and countless versions of every moment, dreams can feel like gentle glimpses into other directions your life might have taken. Not literal visions, but soft reflections of possibility. A dream that feels prophetic may simply be your mind briefly wandering across the emotional outline of a nearby path, one that carries a similar shape to your waking life. Think of it as standing at a crossroads. You cannot see every road in detail, but you can sometimes feel the direction each one leads. Dreams may offer that feeling, an intuitive sense of where things are moving, even if you cannot articulate it while awake. On very rare occasions, people describe shared premonition dreams. Two individuals connected by family, love, or deep friendship dream the same event before it happens. Whether this is coincidence, emotional synchrony, or something harder to name, it leaves a lasting mark. It reinforces the sense that dreams are not isolated images inside individual minds, but part of a larger emotional fabric, woven from threads that travel quietly between people. The purpose of exploring premonition dreams is not to argue that they reveal the future. Instead, it is to honor the feeling they evoke, the feeling that your mind is larger, deeper, and more perceptive than you often give it credit for. Dreams remind you that intuition is not a small or fragile thing. It is a deep current that flows through your inner world, gathering hints, emotions, and impressions long before they reach the surface. Premonition dreams, whether literal or symbolic, reveal the quiet intelligence of the sleeping mind. They show how closely your dreams follow the shape of your life, how sensitive they are to the patterns forming around you, and how deeply connected your inner world is to the world you inhabit. And in this soft space between dream and waking, between memory and possibility, the dreamer feels part of something larger, something that moves beneath the surface of experience, weaving minds, moments, and meanings together in ways that cannot always be explained but can always be felt. There is a moment in the deepest part of the night when the world outside goes completely still. The streets grow quiet, the air settles, and the sounds of human activity fade into the background like distant echoes. In that stillness, your dreams often take on a more luminous quality. Colours seem richer, scenes expand with a slow, drifting clarity. Emotions deepen and move through you like soft waves. It is in this delicate space that the idea of the quantum hum feels most alive, not as a physical vibration, but as a quiet metaphor for the subtle forces that shape both the universe and the inner world. To understand this hum in the softest possible way, imagine that the entire universe rests on a vast invisible fabric. Not a fabric you can touch or see, but one that exists underneath everything. Every star, every breath, every thought. Physicists describe this fabric as made of fields, each one gentle and ever-present, even in places where there seems to be nothing at all. These fields are never perfectly still. They tremble faintly, releasing tiny ripples that dance through space. Scientists sometimes call this zero-point energy, but we can imagine it more simply. The universe's soft background engine, quietly humming in every moment. If you've ever held a guitar and felt the wood vibrate slightly after a string is plucked, you already understand this hum. The resonance does not vanish instantly. It lingers, shaping the air around it. In a similar way, the universe carries its own lingering resonance, a constant shimmer of possibility. And because your mind is part of this universe, the hum threads through you as well. Your thoughts, sensations, memories, and dreams all arise within this subtle cosmic backdrop. When you dream, your mind becomes particularly sensitive to these inner resonances. Logic steps aside. Linear time becomes soft and flexible. You drift into a state where the boundaries of identity and memory are no longer tight and defined. And in this loosened space, you may sense emotional harmonies that belong not only to your present life, but also to the countless possibilities that surround it. This is where the metaphor of multiversal resonance enters, not to suggest that your dreams literally connect to other universes, but to describe the way they sometimes feel. Just as guitar strings can vibrate together when one is plucked, even without being touched, your dreams may sometimes echo with the emotional patterns of paths your life could have taken. When you feel a dream self who is older, braver, or more uncertain than the person you are today, it may be because your mind is exploring the emotional outlines of different possibilities. Consider a dream in which you live in a city you've never visited, yet everything, from the smell of the air to the angle of the light, feels familiar. Or a dream where you speak with confidence you rarely show in waking life. Or one where you face a fear you've quietly avoided for years. These dreams carry the resonance of your unrealized selves. They hum with the stories you have not lived but have, imagined in brief flashes during the day or buried deep in memory. In this sense, the quantum hum becomes a way to understand why dreams can feel so layered. A dream does not simply recreate the past or fabricate nonsense. It blends memory, intuition, longing, fear, and imagination into a single moving pattern. That pattern may feel like a harmony, a chord composed of many emotional notes vibrating together. Each note reflects a different version of you. The person you were, the person you are becoming, and the person you could have been. Some dreams make this resonance especially vivid. You may dream of a house you've never seen, yet you know exactly what is behind every door. You may dream of a stranger whose presence feels as familiar as family. You may dream of choices you never made but feel their consequences as clearly as if they were real. These dreams resemble the soft vibrations of a chord played on a piano, a blend of tones that rise and fall together, shaped by the emotional threads of multiple possibilities. From a scientific perspective, this can be explained through the brain's extraordinary capacity to synthesize information. Your mind holds memories, fragments of stories, glimpses of potential futures, emotional residues from the past, and symbolic associations you barely recognize. During sleep, these elements combine freely, guided by feelings rather than facts. The result can resemble resonance, echoes of everything that lives within you, expressed in the language of imagery and intuition. But even if this explanation is enough, the poetic imagination invites another layer. If the universe truly holds countless paths, each one a possibility, each one carrying its own emotional texture, then dreams might reflect the faint contours of those paths. Not because your mind travels through other worlds, but because your imagination is naturally shaped by the structure of possibility. You feel the edges of paths you did not walk. You imagine conversations you never had. You sense versions of yourself you will never become. These sensations mirror the idea of a multiverse, not in physics, but in feeling. The quantum hum, then, becomes a beautiful metaphor for the richness of your inner world. Just as the universe vibrates with tiny fluctuations that never fade, your inner life vibrates with endless possibilities. Your dreams pick up those vibrations in subtle ways, weaving them into stories that help you understand yourself, stories that help you feel your way through decisions, stories that remind you of the vastness inside you. Dreams, in this view, do not predict or reveal other universes. They reveal the way possibility lives within you. They show you the harmonics of your life, the echoes of choices made and unmade, the shadows of paths taken and not taken. They help you feel the contours of your own complexity. And when you wake from a dream that felt like a message, or a glimpse, or a whisper, part of that feeling may arise from the simple truth that your mind is always resonating with its own potential. Dreams let you hear that resonance more clearly, like listening to a distant melody in the quiet of night. If the universe hums with possibility, your dreams are the gentle way your mind sings along. When you wake from a dream, it often slips away from you like mist rising from a field, soft, weightless, and impossible to hold. Yet sometimes, even when the images fade, something lingers. A mood, a symbol, a familiar but distant feeling that rests on your skin like the memory of a breeze. These quiet remnants are the clues your dreaming mind leaves behind, gentle traces of the inner worlds you visited during sleep. Tonight, we begin to explore how to notice these traces, not to decode them like puzzles or predict the future, but to understand the way your dreams speak. Dreams are fluent in a language older than words, a language made of emotion, metaphor, and possibility. They rarely tell you something directly. Instead, they guide you with soft impressions, the way moonlight guides your steps without illuminating the entire path. The first of these clues is emotional tone. Before trying to recall the details of a dream, pay attention to how it made you feel. Did you wake with a sense of calm, as though the dream wrapped you in warmth? Did you feel unsettled, even if nothing frightening occurred? Did you feel nostalgic, sorrowful, relieved, or quietly hopeful? These emotions are the first hints of what your dream was exploring. Sometimes the story of a dream is confusing, but the feeling is clear. Emotional tone is important because dreams often touch the deeper layers of your mind, layers that operate beneath conscious thought. A dream that feels older than your current life, for example, might be revisiting long-buried memories, or exploring a version of yourself you grew out of but still carry quietly inside. A dream that feels strangely new, on the other hand, might reflect a future possibility your mind is already preparing for, even if you haven't yet recognized it while awake. Next, notice the symbols. Dreams rarely use literal images. Instead, they draw from a shared symbolic vocabulary, like the way water can represent emotion, or a locked door can represent an unanswered question. A staircase can symbolize transition. A forest can symbolize exploration or uncertainty. Light might represent clarity, while shadow might represent avoidance. These symbols are not fixed or universal, but they often resonate deeply because they come from the timeless human experience. Some symbols appear repeatedly across your dreams: a particular house, a bridge, a certain face, a classroom, a forgotten road. These recurring images act like soft anchors, places your dreaming mind returns to because they hold unfinished meaning. You might not understand their purpose at first, but you'll feel their significance the way you feel gravity. When a symbol returns again and again, it is not a coincidence. It is a quiet reminder to pay attention. And then there are the symbols that feel unfamiliar yet meaningful. Images that seem to arrive from nowhere but feel full of weight. These dream elements are like brushstrokes from the deeper imagination, hints of emotional truths you have not found words for yet. They may represent an aspect of yourself you haven't fully acknowledged, or they might be expressions of possibility, glimpses of paths your mind is considering, sensed before they are understood. Dreams also contain echoes, small details that appear in different dreams separated by months or even years. A recurring colour, a particular number, a phrase you've never heard in waking life but recognise instantly inside a dream. These echoes are part of the dream lattice your mind builds over time, interweaving meanings across different moments of your life. When you begin to notice these echoes, you see the shape of the inner world your dreams are quietly mapping. One of the gentlest ways to recognise these patterns is through a dream journal. It does not need to be elaborate. A few sentences upon waking are enough. Write down the feeling first, then the symbols, and finally any memory fragments that remain. As you continue, you will begin to notice patterns you did not see before. Dream journaling is not about creating a record. It is about listening to the quiet voice of your inner world. As you gather these clues, you may start to feel something surprising. Some dreams resemble alternate memories, not memories from your waking life, but memories from a life that feels parallel in emotional shape. Perhaps you dream of a job you never took, but the dream carries the emotional weight of a path you once considered. Perhaps you dream of a relationship that never happened, but the dream captures the longing or fear associated with it. These emotional correspondences can feel strangely like glimpses of an unrealized you. This does not mean dreams are showing literal alternate worlds, but they do invite you to consider that your identity is not singular. It is shaped by choices you made, choices you did not make, and choices you have yet to face. Dreams gather all these possibilities and express them through the symbols, moods, and echoes that rise during sleep. In this way, they mirror the idea of a multiverse, not in physics, but in psychology. Dreams can also reveal subtle déjà vu patterns. You might dream of a scene and then, weeks later, experience something that resembles it. This does not imply prediction. It simply shows that your dreaming mind sometimes senses the emotional direction your life is moving toward. Dreams operate in the space of pattern, not chronology. They follow emotional gravity rather than time. When you notice these small correspondences, it is not a sign of supernatural insight. It is a sign that your inner world is paying attention. As you learn to listen to your dreams, they begin to feel less like random stories and more like conversations, soft, symbolic dialogues between different layers of your mind. The symbols aren't coded messages, the feelings aren't warnings. They are reflections of your inner landscape, shaped by your memories, your hopes, your fears, and the many paths your life could take. And in this gentle listening, you begin to sense the multiversal quality of the dream world. Not because it reveals literal other lives, but because it shows how wide, how spacious, and how layered your inner world truly is. Within you are many threads, many versions of who you are, who you were, and who you may become. Your dreams help you feel those threads, one soft echo at a time. There are moments in dreams when you feel yourself behaving in ways you wouldn't normally act, ways that surprise you, unsettle you, or even impress you. Perhaps you speak with a confidence you rarely show in waking life. Perhaps you make a bold decision you've avoided for years. Or perhaps you find yourself living a life that feels familiar in its emotional shape, even though none of the details match your own. These moments can feel as though you're briefly stepping into another version of yourself, one who exists just slightly beyond your everyday awareness. Psychologists often say that dreams reveal aspects of the self that remain quiet during the day. But there is something more layered happening beneath that explanation. When you observe enough of your dreams, when you track them gently without trying to force meaning, you begin to notice patterns, threads that connect one dream to another. These threads are not linear, and they are rarely obvious at first. Instead, they form a subtle pattern, like faint footprints scattered across a field. When you look closely, you realize they belong to different versions of you. Imagine for a moment that your identity is not a single line, but a landscape, wide and varied. In one part of this landscape, there is the version of you shaped by courage. In another, the version shaped by hesitation. In another, the version shaped by loss or love or ambition or curiosity. These versions are not separate personalities. They are emotional possibilities. The many ways a life can unfold when influenced by different experiences, choices, or circumstances. Dreams move through this landscape with remarkable freedom. They do not follow the straight road you take during the day. Instead, they wander along the ridges and valleys, exploring what might have been, what could be, and what still lives quietly inside you. When you dream of being a different you are not glimpsing a literal parallel universe. You're experiencing the emotional truth that your identity contains far more potential than your waking life expresses. These alternate self-narratives often appear in dreams that feel especially vivid or coherent. You may find yourself in a job you never pursued, yet you feel completely at home. You may be surrounded by people you've never met, yet you feel deeply connected to them. You may walk into a house you've never lived in, yet you know exactly where everything is. These dreams feel less like fantasies and more like memories belonging to someone you almost were. Where do these dreams come from? Part of the answer lies in the brain's natural ability to recombine memories. Every choice you make excludes other possibilities, but your mind still carries the emotional echoes of those unchosen paths. A decision not to move to a new city leaves behind an emotional outline of the life you might have lived there. A relationship that never blossomed leaves behind a story your imagination sometimes revisits. Dreams weave these outlines into narratives that feel complete, even though they were never lived. Another part of the answer comes from your inner world of conflicting desires, fears, and hopes. Dreams allow you to explore these inner dynamics safely. If part of you longs for change, your dreams may show you scenes where you have already changed. If part of you resists something new, your dreams may paint landscapes where your hesitation shapes the environment. These dream selves help you understand the possibilities of your waking life, not by predicting them, but by embodying them in symbolic form. This is where the metaphor of the many worlds idea becomes especially graceful, not as a literal explanation, but as a poetic one. If the universe holds countless possibilities, perhaps your mind holds countless emotional timelines, each reflecting a different shade of who you could become. Dreams let you drift among these timelines, feeling their texture without committing to any of them. You wander through the multiverse of your own identity. Sometimes these dream narratives feel so clear that they resemble alternate biographies. You wake with the sense that you remember something, not a real memory, but a potential one. A life you could have lived, a self you could have been. This sensation can be comforting, curious, or bittersweet. It reminds you that identity is fluid, that the person you are today is only one of many stories encoded in your mind. Dreams also reveal patterns across these alternate narrative threads. One version of you might repeatedly face the same symbolic challenge: crossing a bridge, climbing a mountain, losing a key, or opening a locked door. Another version might continually encounter mentors, guides, or wise strangers who seem to offer insight. Yet another version might inhabit a darker or more shadowed world, revealing fears you have not yet faced. These repeated motifs form a lattice of meaning. When you begin to track these patterns, you start to see how the parallel selves in your dreams represent emotional needs, unresolved conflicts, or dormant strengths. The confident dream self may be showing you courage you haven't recognized in yourself. The frightened dream self may be revealing places where healing is needed. The wise dream self may be offering clarity your waking mind has been too busy to notice. These dream selves are not hallucinations. They are echoes, reflections of the layered nature of identity. Each one carries a different tone, a different emotional flavor, a different potential. Together, they form a spectrum of possibility that your waking mind cannot access all at once, but that your dreaming mind can explore freely. As you reflect on these patterns, you may begin to notice how they influence your waking life. A dream that shows you living a different path may inspire a small change in your real life, a shift in attitude, a new curiosity, or a quiet bravery. A dream where you face a fear may leave you feeling lighter the next day. A dream where you fail or fall may reveal something that needs attention. These effects are not mystical. They are the natural result of the mind integrating its many layers. Dreams, in this view, do not tell you who you should be. They show you who you could be. They reveal the emotional multiverse that lives inside you, full of unexpressed strengths, quiet vulnerabilities, forgotten memories, and imagined futures. They remind you that identity is not a single story, but a constellation of possibilities. And when you wake from a dream that feels like stepping into another life, you bring back a small piece of that possibility, a reminder that the boundaries of self are soft and that every version of you, dreamed or lived, belongs to the same deep, quiet center. There is a special kind of dreaming, one that arrives quietly, like a candle being lit in a dark room, when you become aware that you are dreaming while still inside the dream. In this state, the dream world does not disappear as it normally does when you wake. Instead, it steadies itself, holding its shape long enough for you to explore it with a clarity that feels both magical and profoundly peaceful. This is lucid dreaming, a moment when consciousness drifts gently into the dream world without breaking it. Lucid dreams often begin with a flicker of realization. You notice something unusual, a hallway that goes on forever, a clock whose hands won't settle, a room that shifts shape each time you look away. These discrepancies do not frighten you. Instead, they spark curiosity. You think softly, "Oh, I must be dreaming." And rather than pulling you awake, this realization allows the dream to unfold around you like a quiet landscape you suddenly understand. What makes lucid dreaming so remarkable is not control. Movies and stories often exaggerate that part, but awareness. It is the awareness of the dream world as a world shaped by your inner mind. It is the gentle recognition that everything you see, every person, every object, every horizon, is built from fragments of memory, emotion, and imagination. You begin to notice the way the scenery breathes, the way light behaves differently, and the way transitions flow like water instead of time. In this state, your mind becomes a kind of observer and participant at the same time. You do not force the dream to obey you. Instead, you walk through it with curiosity, like a visitor exploring a foreign place. Some people try to change the dream deliberately, but the most meaningful lucid dreams often arise when you let the dream lead. You ask questions, not aloud, but with quiet intention. Where does this path go? What does this door open onto? What is my mind trying to tell me through this scene? Lucid dreaming offers a unique way to explore the many emotional possibilities of the self, because when you are aware inside the dream, you have the chance to interact with the different versions of yourself that appear there. The bolder version, the quieter version, the one carrying grief, the one carrying strength. In waking life, these versions rarely speak to each other, but in lucid dreams they often appear as characters, reflections, or voices of insight. Imagine meeting a dream self who walks straighter than you do, who speaks with clarity, who seems to understand something you've been struggling to articulate. This figure may not be a separate identity. It may simply be a part of you that you have not accessed while awake. Or imagine encountering a fearful version of yourself, trembling at the edge of a cliff. Instead of avoiding this fear, the lucid dream allows you to sit beside it, to ask it what it wants, to understand why it lingers in your psyche. These encounters can feel like stepping into a small observatory, not the kind that looks outward to the stars, but the kind that looks inward, toward the constellations that form your inner life. Lucid dreaming does not give you a map of these constellations, but it gives you a moment to see them clearly. Patterns of emotion, memory, imagination, and potential, all shining gently around you. It is tempting to think of lucid dreaming as a literal crossing into alternate realities. The sense of freedom, the vividness of the environment, and the feeling of stepping into a world that responds to emotion rather than physics. It can all feel like slipping into a neighbouring dimension. But in truth, lucid dreams are better understood as a deeper awareness of your own mind. They reveal how rich the inner world can be when consciousness is present, but not constrained by the waking rules of time and logic. Still, the metaphor of exploring a multiverse can be useful. In a lucid dream, you can walk into a life you never lived, speak to people you've never met, or revisit moments that hold unresolved meaning. You might stand on a street that feels like a crossroads between many possible futures. You might climb a staircase that seems to lead into another version of you. Lucid dreams express possibility with such clarity that they echo the idea of branching paths, even if not literally. The way lucid dreams unfold also helps illuminate the flexible nature of the self. In waking life, identity feels solid, anchored. But in dreams, the boundaries soften. You can shift perspectives, inhabit different moods, even, or most interestingly, feel memories that never occurred. These dream memories feel like emotional sketches of parallel selves, helping you understand the potential that exists within you. Many people who experience lucid dreams describe a deep sense of peace, as though they are seeing themselves from a wider, more compassionate vantage point. They emerge with a feeling of integration, like two parts of a puzzle clicking into place. Lucid dreams can resolve tensions, offer insight, or simply provide a moment of clarity that lingers long after waking. They do not offer answers in words, they offer them in feelings. But perhaps the most profound aspect of lucid dreaming is the gentle lesson it carries about awareness. When you realize you are dreaming, everything around you becomes more vivid. Colors brighten, sounds sharpen, and emotions deepen. This heightened awareness mirrors a truth about waking life. When you pay attention, even subtly, the world seems to expand. Lucid dreaming becomes a metaphor for conscious living, an example of how awareness can transform experience without changing its content. And in this way, lucid dreams become more than dreams. They become practice. They teach you to navigate your inner world with the same gentleness you bring to the dream world. They teach you to notice the subtle shifts, the quiet messages, the emotional resonance that lives beneath your daily thoughts. They remind you that within the mind lies a landscape vast enough to hold countless versions of yourself. When you wake from a lucid dream, there is a moment of stillness, a lingering awareness that feels like the echo of a door closing softly. In that moment, you recognize that the dream world and the waking world are not as far apart as they seem. Both are woven from perception, meaning, memory, and imagination. Both are shaped by the quiet hum of possibility, and both remind you, in their own way, that consciousness is far wider than the narrow beam of attention you use while awake. Lucid dreaming is not an escape from reality. It is an invitation to meet yourself with clarity, compassion, and curiosity. A reminder that you are more than one narrative, a gentle window into the multiverse of your own mind. When morning arrives, it does not always announce itself with the sharpness of sunlight or the insistence of an alarm. Sometimes it comes quietly, as a gradual softening of the dream world. You feel the warmth of your blankets more clearly. Your breathing becomes a little steadier. The edges of the night loosen, and the last fragments of your dreams drift upward like delicate threads dissolving into the air. Yet even as these images fade, something remains. An afterglow, a texture, a mood that carries into waking like the faint echo of distant music. This lingering sensation is the final reminder of the journey you've taken through your inner multiverse. Whether your dreams presented alternate versions of yourself, symbolic landscapes, recurring echoes, or moments of clarity, each one leaves behind a trace that becomes part of your waking life. These trace memories are not accidental. They reflect the work your mind has been doing, sorting through possibilities, integrating unresolved feelings, exploring hidden potential, and gently bringing insight to the surface without forcing it. When you first open your eyes, it can feel as though you have returned to a single version of reality, the familiar one, with its routines and responsibilities. But if you pay attention, you may sense that your inner world is just a little wider than it was the night before. Dreams have a way of softening the boundaries of identity. They show you that who you are is not fixed. You carry within you many possible selves, many emotional pathways, many versions of courage and vulnerability. In this softened space between dreaming and waking, the idea of the quantum hum takes on its most personal meaning, not as physics, but as metaphor. The hum becomes the quiet awareness that you're made of possibilities, that every thought, every decision, every moment of reflection ripples through your life like a gentle vibration. Dreams tune you to that vibration. They reveal how deeply connected your inner world is to your waking choices. Consider the moments when a dream gives you clarity you didn't know you had. You wake with an understanding of a situation that has been troubling you, Or you feel a calm acceptance where there was tension the day before. Or you notice a desire you'd been ignoring. These aren't messages from another universe. They are your own emotional truths rising into the light. Dreams help these truths surface gently, so that when you return to waking life, you carry a quiet awareness that feels like guidance. There are also mornings when a dream leaves you unsettled. Perhaps you see a version of yourself you don't wish to become, or you revisit a place that holds unfinished meaning. These dreams do not exist to frighten you. They exist to remind you that the mind carries more than one story, and that healing often begins in the hidden corners. The feelings that linger after unsettling dreams often point toward areas in your waking life that need attention. They do not predict difficulty, they illuminate it with softness. On other mornings, you may wake with a sense of connection, as though someone in your dream accompanied you through the night, a loved one, a stranger, or a version of yourself who felt wiser or more compassionate. These encounters can leave a warmth in your chest, a feeling of being held. They remind you that your inner world is rich with support, that your mind is capable of offering comfort even when the world feels uncertain. And then there are mornings when you wake with a sense of possibility, a feeling that your life contains more paths than you once believed. You may remember a dream in which you felt braver, more confident, more curious, or more open. These dreams do not command you to change. They simply show you a version of yourself you might grow into. They reveal potential, not destiny. They whisper, there are more ways to be you. This is where the metaphor of the multiverse becomes a gentle companion rather than a scientific claim. Whether or not parallel worlds exist, your inner world certainly contains many possibilities. Each dream lets you walk briefly among them. And when morning comes, you bring back small pieces, insights, questions, emotions, and subtle shifts in perspective. These pieces shape your waking life in ways you may not notice at first, but they accumulate gently, like layers of polished stone. As you rise from sleep, the quantum hum follows you, not as sound, but as awareness. A quiet reminder that your life is not a fixed line, but a flowing path. A reminder that your identity is spacious. A reminder that possibility is always present, even in the smallest decisions. Dreams help you feel the edges of that possibility, so that when you face the day, you do so with a slightly more open heart. In the calm of the morning, you might take a moment to reflect on the feeling your dreams left behind. Not the details. Those fade too quickly, but the mood. Was it hopeful, restless, tender, mysterious? This mood often carries the deepest meaning. It is the distilled essence of everything the dream explored. Let it sit with you. Let it guide your breath for a moment. Let it remind you that your mind is always working with you, even when you sleep. As the day unfolds, the dream's influence may become subtler, dissolving into the background, merging with your thoughts and actions. But something of it always remains, a sense of possibility, a quiet curiosity, a softness toward yourself, a recognition that you are more than one version of who you are. You're a chorus of past, present, and future selves, each humming gently beneath the surface. And when night returns, you will once again step into the dream world, into the vast, shimmering landscape of emotion, memory, intuition, and imagination. You will drift into the soft hum of possibility, exploring the contours of your inner multiverse. And in the morning, you will return, carrying the faint echo of those travels within you. Your dreams do not take you away from your life. They bring you closer to it. They help you understand its depth, its complexity, its beauty. They remind you that you're never alone, not in waking, not in dreaming, not in the quiet spaces in between. In this final moment of the night, as the last traces of darkness soften into dawn, the hum remains, a quiet companion, a gentle guide, and a reminder that every moment, waking or dreaming, holds the potential for a new beginning.